Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Mary Willis. I'm the director of the Career Development Center at Fresno State. And with me today, I have a panel of folks who have lived the dream. They're thriving in a creative career. So that's going to be our topic today. And hopefully, and I know for a fact that you're going to find this helpful as you chart your course towards a creative career or consider a creative career. So let's start, and I'll initially just call on each of you to share about yourselves. So Luca, we'll start with you. Please share about your career journey from college life to where you are today.
For sure. Mary, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here with y'all. My name's Luca Petrucci. My pronouns are he, him, his. I grew up in Madera, California, and then went to Fresno State for 5 years. So I'm really familiar with the Valley. I started my freshman year of college thinking I wanted to be a dentist. I had some crazy things happen with my teeth in the fifth grade. I lost a permanent tooth on the asphalt on a rainy day, and my dentist was amazing. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I'm the student who I don't I work really hard versus just things come naturally. So my freshman year at Fresno State, I was working so freaking hard in my Chem 1A class, and I barely passed it. So I talked to a counselor at Fresno State, and we just got really clear on like, what do you really want to do? Not what does your dad want for you or your no want for you? Like, what do you really want to do? And I got clear that I love promoting things, I love storytelling, I love connecting, and that led me to become a business admin with the marketing emphasis major. And my junior year of college, things were just happening so freaking fast. And I was like, I need a pause. I'm not ready to go out in the real world in a year. And I ended up taking a break, leaving Fresno and interning at Disneyland for 8 months. And it just opened my eyes to so much possibility of being, of living, of dreaming, of doing. And I am such a huge proponent of getting uncomfortable, stepping outside of the area just to see what is possible. And that just opened my eyes to so many things. It taught me the importance of continuing to try things. I had a belief that you only could try things when you're in school, and after you graduate, it's time to like buckle up and focus on one path. And when I came back to Fresno State and I graduated my senior year, I still really didn't know what I wanted to do. I did sales. I ended up quitting my job after 2 months because it just wasn't authentic to me, which freaked my mom out. I moved from Fresno to Riverside, 6 hours away, got an apartment, had to break my lease, moved home after, and just started trying things. I was an interim activities director at my high school. I worked at a PR agency. I worked at Lululemon. I ended up becoming a cycling instructor while marketing freelance on the side. And that led me to podcasting, to eventually be the CEO of my own business, where today I support businesses and individuals with marketing and branding. And I'm a motivational speaker with students. So I was just in Fresno about a month ago speaking with the Fresno State ambassadors and outreach team for middle school and high school students. So yeah, it's been this kind of ride. And my biggest thing is just continue to ask yourself, like, what do you really want? And what do you not want?
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So Jeremiah, share a little bit about your journey.
Hi, my name is Jeremiah Belt. I'm from the Valley originally, and then growing up, I was way into like video games and arts and all of that. And in high school, I started to like parlay that traditional art into tech because I liked computers as well. So I got into 3D animation and 3D modeling, very inspired by like Pixar's work. So I always envisioned that that's what I was going to do. Like that was my goal. And so I went to school down south at a school down there for a little while. The head of the department at the time had experience at Disney, so I felt like it was a good place to start. It was very traditional art at first, and then started to pivot into more of the digital stuff. From there, at that school, actually, is where I learned a lot of the logistics of like, it's one thing to create something either traditionally or on a computer, but how do you deliver that in the broadcast world or in animation or in film? And at that school, we did a lot of big productions, and so that logistical bit of knowledge is what I learned down there, and that actually kind of led me in a different direction and started going into more of the broadcast and side of things. My boss down there, who I was working with, used to work for New Line Cinema. He got my interest to get on the Lord of the Rings film project as a visual effects artist. So I tried, and I did not. But through the interviewing of that job, I learned what I didn't know. I learned what I wasn't learning at that school, and I started my many transfers to different art schools and stuff along the way to try to pick up that knowledge. So I transferred back through the Valley and Fresno and back home for a bit. And then that's where I met my wife. And then I ended up going to a smaller polytech school in the Bay with a lot of people on the board from Pixar and ILM there. It was great. I learned a lot. And as you do in a creative field, you start to discover, like Luca was mentioning, you start to discover the things that you enjoy and the things that you don't enjoy, and the things that you thought you were going to enjoy turn out to be a chore, or very tedious. So that dream of being a 3D modeling and animator started to pivot into motion graphics and color correction, and I learned about color correction for film and TV, and I really love that. I'm a very OCD person, and I love color. So the idea of like getting a project and being the last person to touch it and the finisher to make it as pretty as possible, and then at the same time as technical as possible to meet standards for broadcast and air and film was really appealing. So I started going that way. And then I came back to the Valley and I got married, and my wife was in graduate school, and I was scared because I was in the Valley and it's not LA and it's not San Francisco. And so I started hopping around. So yeah, I have a 3D background. So I did architectural rendering for a while. Then I started doing editing for commercial work, and I worked Casey 24, Jeffrey Scott Advertising as a graphic designer. Jumped around a lot, freelance for over a decade. But it took that time of networking initially in the Valley to get to know this community in that area and be able to work in broadcast and get work. And then now I work at Windsong Productions as the head of lead motion graphics artist and colorist. It's been cool. Yeah.
And if you get the opportunity, go check out their website. It's Windsong Pro.
Yes.
Yeah. They've got, I always say that if it's a pretty local commercial, well shot, well colored, probably Jeremiah and the folks at Windsong were involved. So
Probably.
So next is Alexis.
Well, hi everyone, and Luca and Jeremiah. It's just so awesome to hear your journeys and how you've really navigated locations across California in your careers, but two, just what your career is looking like or what you wanted it to look like and how it changed. And I think one thing we can all relate to is that you change a lot, especially in college, on what you want to do, and that's similar to what my trait was. I moved technically from Southern California here to the Valley in 2014 to attend Fresno State. So I'm not a Valley native, but I feel a deep sense of connection and passion for the Valley now that I've lived here for quite some time. So I moved here again in 2014. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anybody. And so it was a little scary for me coming into college without like And you see it in some instances where you're in the Central Valley and you occasionally know people on campus just through high school or sports maybe, or even extracurriculars outside of the area, just because that's part of the community here, I've noticed. So I came in not knowing anybody or anything, but I had this idea in my head that I wanted to be a veterinarian. And Fresno State was one of those schools that had a really great program. And I knew that it was the place that I wanted to be, because if there's one thing I'm going to do, I want to go to a school that's close enough to home and that can get me where I want to go, right? So I came in, I was a pre-veterinarian major for about a year. And then I decided after taking a couple of courses that although the science was really cool and I'm still very into the whole science world, that I didn't want to be on call for, not great instances with animals, right? Because it is a tough job and it's not for everybody. And I don't think I could be 24 hours like a regular doctor, because animals are cute. And I just don't know if I could be on call for maybe not so cute moments, right, with our pets or animals that we love dearly. So I reached out actually to Mary. I know I talked to Mary a lot in my undergraduate career. And I also reached out to a couple of faculty that were involved in a new major called Agricultural Communications based out of the Jordan College of Ag. I was told that I was very sociable and would be good at marketing. And so because I had no direction at that point, I just said yes. Because I was like, well, if someone can see potential in me that maybe I don't see, maybe I should listen, because if we're in our heads all the time, sometimes we're missing out on really good opportunities, right? Similar to what Luca kind of mentioned earlier. So I said yes, and I fell in love, to be honest. And I did marketing from about 2015 onward, obviously until now. And I held a myriad of different internships, one with University Communications at Fresno State, and then I also interned at the Fresno State Winery. And then I did a ton of work as a public relations student with the Fresno County Farm Bureau. I mean, I really tried to immerse myself in the community that was already in place and just network and get to know people that were, I'm not going to say in the community because it just seems so generalized. I think these people are like the blood and soul and foundation to the Fresno community, because I think that's what makes Fresno incredibly unique compared to a lot of other cities across California, is that it's small enough but also big enough. And I love that, how that community transcends people in a way. There's so many connections. So I pivoted into, after graduation in 2019, I did agency work for about a year. And although agency work is fast paced and I thrive in certain environments, I discovered that agency life wasn't for me. And I really wanted to work on just a singular client. And so I quit and I was unemployed for 6 months. And I just was like, I know this isn't for me. This isn't my true calling, like Luca kind of mentioned, but I still want to be in marketing, but this is the direction that I want to go. So I sat unemployed for 6 months. It was extremely stressful. I had a boyfriend at the time who's now my husband, and a dog, and we were like, I don't know what to do. So I reached out to some of the connections I had made as an undergraduate student through internships or just friendships in college that I had just had through classes and things like that. And an opportunity at the Water, Energy, and Technology Center came up, which is where I'm currently employed. So I was hired right before the pandemic started in February of 2020. And then after a week of working in person, was sent home. And so it's been a transition. One, because I think PR marketing is, you're so used to being around people and talking to people all the time and popping over to offices or going to events. And so that pivoted when COVID had happened. We were all home and sitting on our Zoom, and it was different, but in some ways I really enjoyed it because it let me dive more into what I wanted to do too. And again, I've been here at the Wet Center for almost 4 years now, and I absolutely enjoy it. We help water, energy, and ag tech startups and entrepreneurs commercialize their business here in the Valley, and we are really laying the foundation for people who are interested in helping farmers or people involved in those communities and industries grow here, because there's a massive presence obviously in the Silicon and Bay Area with a lot of tech startups. And we think that those technologies could also be of benefit to communities here, specifically the farming communities or people involved again in water, energy, and ag, which are what feels like a very strong stake in the Fresno community. So that's kind of where I grew, at least starting from being a freshman in college and not really knowing anything to now. And then that's very much a testament to the people I've met and interacted with over time. I did do, well, I started freelance work in 2017 with my company, which is now rebranded to Alexis Smith Miara Photography and Creative. And so I've done photography for a very long time, and it is a very beloved pastime of mine. And so what better way to kind of, again, be creative like this webinar is kind of all about, and enjoy those different avenues in addition to my full-time work that allows me to be so creative. And then I also am recently signed with a modeling agency, and that's new, completely out of the blue. It was something that I was like, I've never tried it, and it seems like fun. So I tried it, and I'm signed with an agency. I haven't gotten any work because it's only been a month, but it's something that interests me. And since I love the photography and like the production side of it, I figured it'd be fun to also be on the other side of the camera as well. So that's I think a very short summary of myself. Hopefully I didn't ramble on for too
No, you're good. Well, and I'll leave this question. You can just pop in as you feel like it, but all of you have been or are currently self-employed. And I know some of our students in the that are, in the arts, humanities, marketing, anything creative, may look to that path to start their careers or transition into their careers. So what should students do to prepare to, in essence, be their own boss?
I'll jump in. I will say it is a tough one because I think it depends on just your personality, but it also depends on the industry you're trying to break into, and doing it by yourself is extremely overwhelming. And I'm never, ever going to invalidate that, because sometimes we get in our own heads and we think, oh, maybe we don't, have the know-how or the experience, or no one wants to book with me. And that can feel really, it can feel really bad. It feels crappy. It's like, oh, no one believes in me. But I think if you change your mindset and getting into self-employment, that you believe in you, I think by nature, those things, like things that you envision for your own business, are going to come to you, but trust that it'll come over time and at the right time, and to not put so much pressure on, oh, well, I need to be on Forbes top 50 self-starters, you know what I mean? Start small, but believe that, you are just as worthy and contributing something just as powerful to the people you are trying to reach and connect with. That mindset is important to keep, especially when you're self-employed, I think.
Yeah. It's been 3 years that I've been self-employed full-time with Luca Petrucci coaching, consulting, and speaking. I've been a freelance marketer since 2017. And what I would tell like a younger version of me is, you are your worst critic. Like, owning my own business has been such a mirror to limiting beliefs about scarcity, of worry, of self-doubt. And I know the reason I am here today, owning a successful business, is the support that I put in play, whether that's a therapist, a business coach, friends, different mentors from college, because there's been so many days that I'm like, I am done. I want to quit this. I want something that is more quote unquote secure. And it's been interesting because I have so many friends over the past 3 years, like, chose the more secure route and like have gotten laid off time and time again. So it's like, I would just say it's so important to get clear on your limiting beliefs, the things that hold you back. Like, the 5 common reactions are fear, doubt, worry, unforgiveness, shame. Like, get clear on, just be honest with yourself. And 3 questions. I do a lot of speaking with college students and high school students, and like the 3 questions that I would offer you to ask are first is, what do you really want to do? Like, what are the things you want to do? How do you want to feel? What do you want your day to day look like? And then, what do you not want to do? You know, I had to release, like I said before, my dad's dream for me. I had to release my mom's dream for me. I love my mom so much, and she's a unique human, and I'm a unique human. We share some similarities, but we're different. The second question is, what brings you joy? Like, what brings you fulfillment? Like, what are the things, like, I'm learning, like, when are you just sort of in flow, like in that creative flow? uh 3 days ago, I started a 90-day memoir writing class. I really want to write a memoir. And I got this new journal. It's like my little, I'm such a Disney kid at heart. It's a Beauty and the Beast journal. But like, I've just been writing and I'm like, oh my gosh, something that brings me joy is telling my story. So that's the second question. And the third, the first two are very like internal. What do you want? What brings you joy? And then look outward. Like, what does the soul of the world need? What does the world really need? And answer those questions and then see where there's alignment and move in that direction. The last thing I want to say is get clear with, we have a little light show in Jeremy's place. I love it. Get clear with how much money you need to make to sustain the life you want to live. Like, something that I wish I would have known is, like, Luca, when you start out owning your own business, like, you aren't going to be like from my experience, massive abundance where you can fully support yourself at the beginning. I wish I would have gotten clear on rent, expenses, fund money, set that clear, and get a job that allows me to pay for all of that. If it's not the most, I don't know, like elitist or coolest job, like make sure it's something you want to do, but also gives you time to really craft the entrepreneurial vision that you have on the side, because I've left jobs too soon and tried to fully build my business. And there was this pressure, like, oh my gosh, I have this, every single client has to say yes to me because I need this money to live and sustain. So, like, that's what I would like to tell my younger self of, like, just get clear. Like, yeah, I don't need to be making this like abundant amount of money like the second I graduate or a year or two. Like, I don't personally, I didn't. And I wish I would have done both sort of at the same time. I didn't. You live and you learn. This is me telling you something that I learned.
Sorry about the light show. It's the motion sensors in the room. I agree with all of those things for sure. That uncertainty and that leap of faith is like that biggest hump to get over for sure. I kind of came at freelance from a different angle though, in that I had, worked here in the industry for 6 or 7 years before I ever even like occurred to me or even thought to try. And I was just kind of burnt out at the place that I was at. I won't name names. And had the thought crossed my mind, and we had to like ponder that for a while, my wife and I, like, is this something that we can do? And like Luca was saying about having like another job to support your minimum requirements and stuff before doing it. Mine was kind of twofold in that my wife had just finished her graduate degree and got her like career job started. And so I was like, wait, okay, what do you think about me doing this? It might hurt for a little while, but this seems to be like the time where we can like support one another and take this leap. And so I did. And yeah, it's that approach was a little bit different because I had a network of people that I knew, and people that knew my work and stuff. And so I was fairly confident, that I could get work, but at the same time, there's that big creative, angst and question all the time. imposter syndrome and all that kind of questioning, like, are you really good enough to do that on your own? So yeah, that's the hardest part for sure. But I would say, as far as like building that up, for me in such a specifically creative field, you have to show your work. So having a portfolio, all the typical usual things, like the portfolio was like the end all be all. If you can show, they didn't know you, they needed to know your work. And so the portfolio was the way to do that. And then the old adage that I remember just rolling my eyes at in school of like networking, and that is so true. Like, just knowing and spending time in that field and getting to know the people in the area, and from one connection to the next, all the way back, to school, and like Mary and career counselors and all these different things, can give you all these connections that you never really thought of, and that helps. But yeah, then to Luca's thing about budgeting, like that was a huge one, like, because as a freelancer, it was the most at the time that I had ever made, and the least that I've ever made, all at the same time. And so you just have this huge like flux of things, and you learn quickly that you need to plan accordingly, and you need to like try to buffer 3 months out and live below your means, so that when that storm comes, you can weather it, and there's that gap between projects. And if you do that, a calm starts to come. Like, you start to be okay. Like, I just did this work, I didn't sleep for 2 weeks, and now I got 3 weeks to do whatever I want, or research more, or find more, or do more, or expand your own, a skill set even more. And you learn to enjoy that. And honestly, I mean, I'm now working at a production company. I miss that. I miss the schedule freedom. I miss the variety of that. I get a lot of that here. I will say also, to Luca's point, my wife really, really appreciates the concreteness of working at a production facility now. She was not a fan of the freelance work. She wanted a surety, and a surety is not freelance. But like I said, once you get in that groove and you have your network and you have your portfolio and things like that, you do start to enjoy that, and there is a calmness, and it's a fun time.
Yep. And would you say getting a good accountant?
Yes, for sure. Taxes are terrible, and you don't want to get stuck.
Yeah. And just to that point, just to throw out some additional things that prospective students can think about, is connecting with the Small Business Administration, getting a business plan together. You have the Senior Corps of Retired Executives as well, who can provide some coaching on a business plan. And be smart about this, not to squelch your dream, but what's the old saying? If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And granted, I have not been in business for myself. I'm all what I call an entrepreneurial. I always like finding my own fun within an organization. So,
Mary, I have never related to anything so much, though, at the same time. I get it.
Yeah, you create your own fun, but still get done what the organization needs to do, but find, create your own job security. Yay. So along those lines, and I've got a question from the audience, but let me touch on this first, and then we'll move to that one. And Jeremiah actually touched on it a little bit with regard to the positives and negatives of being self-employed versus working for an organization. Any additional thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, I have a lot. I mean, I could lead whole 90 minutes just on this. I feel that the freedom, for sure, the freedom is such a positive for me. I get to choose who I want to be. I get to choose who I want to work with, what I want to do, which is so amazing. Then I feel like there's just like a pro and con to everything. There's an opportunity cost to everything. a con is, like we were talking about, the security.
Mhm.
But it's interesting. It's so interesting. So I worked at a role for 8 months, and it was for a corporation, and I just noticed in my body how inauthentic it felt. In that 8 months, I got like 5 intense migraines. I was working all these crazy hours, and I'm like, well, that's another cost of working for someone else. You know, when you say yes to it, there's expectations from the owner or your manager. And it's like, it's so interesting because like being my own boss, a positive is like yesterday I went to Disneyland. I'm such a Disney kid at heart, and I worked at a coffee shop in Fullerton for 3 hours and then went to Disney at 4 p.m. So that like freedom, and some weekends I work, and it's like when you're doing the thing that you love, um, so like I enjoy working on weekends. And one other thing that I want to share is let yourself evolve. Offer yourself grace and forgiveness. Like after I left the corporate world and was my own boss for a couple years, I sort of have this shame that if I went back to the corporate world, I lost or I wasn't successful. And it was that moment last December, I hit this crossroads where I definitely moved through seasonal depression. I was moving through some deep depression, probably the most depression I've ever
Mm.
experienced, a lot of anxiety. And I was like, you know what, universe, what am I meant to do? I fully surrender. I want to use my gifts and my dreams and my voice. And if it's for an organization, let it be. If it's for myself, let it be. And it's so wild. From January to now, I've been in the most abundance in my career, and it was me surrendering. I applied to a lot of different roles that aligned with what I want to do. I applied to the Trevor Project, the marketing role. I'm really all about creating spaces of belonging where people can be, and surrendering and learning to trust myself and trust my dreams and trust that people want to support me. Like, gosh, Florence and the Machine says it. It's in a Batman movie. It's the darkest before the dawn. I have never believed that more.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, Luca. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that surrender has produced abundance.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, Luca, for kind of sharing just like the downs of operating a business and going through those moments of just like you are just down, sad, frustrated, not sure where to go. But the part where you're like, or where you kind of mentioned the finding things that are aligned with what you truly are passionate about is huge. And I'm in a position, at least from my experience, where my full-time job here at the Wet Center is something that I've been passionate about for a long time. I believe in sustainability and fostering a better tomorrow for people that I won't see because I won't be here anymore, because I really firmly believe that the way that we leave our planet is important for students, for kids, for my nieces, for everybody. And so there's a lot of altruistic work involved in that. And then having my own side business, I think, helps too. But challenging yourself in both spaces is important. And then when you're feeling like you're ready to make that jump on either or, because let's be real, you can't do a full-time job and then a full-time side business. That's ridiculous to expect that of anybody, including yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're ready to make that jump, really take into account, into what Luca was kind of mentioning, what truly you want to achieve with this business. If that's
Mm-hmm.
just, if that's planning your own schedule and making enough money where you're happy and you're fine, great. But if it's like, well, I want to be on Forbes 50 under 50, or I want to, sell my tech or sell my product to another organization and retire and live the rest of my life in, I don't know, Cabo, whatever that goal is. keep that in mind as you go through those decisions, because if it's an end goal for you, even if you're working on a corporate side, or if you're working in a creative outlet where you're freelancing and it's your own business, those goals are important to maintain, because sometimes you can get caught up in the mix of things and your own emotions. And you do hit lows, especially owning your own business. There are periods of time where I don't book any clients for photography because, one, it's hot. Like for example, Fresno in the summer is not desirable to take photos because it's miserable. People are hot. They're worried about sweating in the pictures. And so there are periods of time where you have to pivot. And so for me, I saw the opportunity to get into elopement photography because elopement meant going outside of the Fresno area. So I shot my first elopement wedding in May of this year in Yosemite National Park. I was really excited. I've never done it before. And I put myself out there and I challenged myself, right? But there's a level of confidence that you need to have as a self-employed entrepreneur, so to speak. And you can't let that confidence go, and you can't get in your own head about it. Because for many years, they're like, why don't you shoot weddings? Why don't you shoot weddings? And I was like, oh, it's just a lot of pressure and it's a lot of people. And what if somebody's blinking in the family photo? I'm going to be ridiculed on Yelp for years and my life is over. And, you start getting in your own head and freaking out. But then one of my friends, bless his heart, kept asking, hey, do you want a second shoot a wedding? Hey, I need your help for this. Could you please? Like, I know you do it really well. And in some ways, I think a lot of the times your network and your community believe in you more than you believe in yourself sometimes. And that's refreshing to see, especially as you build your business, because the more that you believe in whatever you're providing to the universe, I think, again, and I mentioned it before, naturally those things come back to you. And the elopement turned out great. I got more inquiries for an elopement, and I shot another one the following month. And so for me, it was like, why did I hold myself back for so long? And then I felt the same way about modeling. I've always been interested. I'm very into fashion, as maybe you can tell. And I was like, why wait? Who cares? I think even if you're messily jumping into something new and you don't know everything about it, I think it still can turn into more success than you possibly ever imagined for yourself. So even though maybe you're jumping into a new career or a new avenue, or if that's freelancing, or even if it's corporate, like the entrepreneur you mentioned, Mary, which I'm going to call myself that now. That is so real. But even if, you're jumping into those spaces and you don't know anything about it, it's refreshing to the human mind to challenge yourself, and you'll feel more empowered to just learn more. But then you take that with you to your next avenue, or maybe you can take it back to your business too. And there's ways that you can expand because of that new knowledge that you didn't have maybe before. So I would say, I guess the way that Fresno State phrases it in many ways is to be bold in everything that you do, because at the end of the day, it's your life that you're wanting to create. So why not create one that you're really happy and positive to be in? It's your space. You don't want to be miserable, right? So try to keep that positive mindset in freelance work, because it can get down, dirty, sad. It really can.
Great.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that for sure. And you definitely are your own worst enemy in many ways, especially as a freelancer, and then especially in a creative field. And often that's the biggest limiting factor is yourself, really. And it takes a while to realize that and have that kind of faith in yourself that you can do it. And because there's always that self-doubt and that worry. And especially when there's like a gap between projects, that's when it really comes, for sure. Like we hit on it earlier, but that freedom, that schedule freedom is a huge thing. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I remember from my freelance time is that sense of freedom is an amazing thing, and you are only limited by as much as you want to put into it. Like you were saying, like having that goal as far as, do you want to live just comfortably, just adequately, or do you want to or do you have a bigger goal in mind? You can do that. It's all up to you. You have it's both the plus and minus that you have this freedom, because now you can say yes to anything and you can say no to anything, and that's entirely up to you. And yeah, it's an interesting line of work, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think ultimately you're your own limiting factor.
Well, and the question that I got asked from our audience is, she's loving the stories that you're sharing, but B, what are your most successful tactics for initiating partnerships with folks in your industry. So how do
Mm,
you grow those connections?
yeah. I mean, I know there's never an arrival. I mean, I am in the work, the practice every day. One of my business coaches told me this one time, and it really impacted me. The way you build a business is one person at a time. With social media, Instagram, TikTok, like when you get all these views and all these likes, there's something that has messed with my mind. Like, oh my gosh, I need to just focus in building my business online because that's like the biggest reach. And is it the biggest reach for the people that you want to work with? The biggest speaking opportunities that I've gotten since January. I mean, they're blowing my mind. I'm like, oh my God, like, is this my life? Like, and I'm like, yes, Luca, you freaking worked for this. Have started with a one-on-one connection. When I first got clear that I wanted to transition my business from marketing and branding to speaking, all with the basis of authenticity, I asked myself, like, who do I want to speak with? And it was high school and college students. And then I was like, who do I know that's a teacher or in education? And I reached out to a lot of my mentors at Fresno State. I knew people at UC Merced, and just had a conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
Genuinely was interested in them, wanted to catch up and said, hey, like, this is what I'm doing. Like, I am a youth speaker. And what I'm getting really consistent with is to continue reaching out and making connections weekly. I have a goal that I'm trying on. I'm failing some weeks, but I'm like, failure is part of success. Every day I'm sending a new Instagram message or an email or a text to someone that I know in education or someone that I know that referred me to someone else to catch up. Because it's just it's the planting of seeds. It's the planting of seeds. And yes, I do promote my business on social media, but I don't use that as the main focus. Some people can because they have such a huge following, and I'm in the process of building that on there. So I would just get really clear to wrap up this question. Who do you want to work with? Like, who do you really want to work with? And how can you consistently be in a conversation? You're not selling people, you're just inviting them. People want to be invited to a cool opportunity. And I offer really cool opportunities for students that remind them of who they are and help them know that they can be themselves and be loved.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Luca. And yeah, Luca and I met because he outreached to me.
Yes.
And we had a fantastic conversation. And it's evolved over time. And that's part of why this is happening today is Luca making the magic happen. I do want to, if as we're getting close to time, do want to have, if anybody in the audience has any questions as opposed to the ones I came up with, because I've got a couple more. So if you don't come through, oh, somebody popped in a question. So it's been asked, what do you do as part of your routine to keep your imagination and creative spark alive?
Ooh, this is a hard one. This is a hard one because I think a lot of the times, especially being online nowadays, it's almost overstimulating. You're in a creative state all of the time. And so that question, I think, is a question creatives revisit constantly because we tend to get in a situation where we're burning out really, really fast. Or, we're creating all day and then we go home and veg on social media, which for some people, that's fine because their job doesn't involve maybe a creative outlet. But when you're moving from creative outlet to creative outlet to creative outlet, it's easy to feel that burnout. So some of the things that I do in my routine to keep my imagination and creative spark alive is spend time in nature. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I think removing myself from creative outlets sometimes just allows for my brain to rest so that when I come back into, social media or press releases or all these different avenues of media and creative everything, it helps kind of bring clarity back into what you're trying to do as a creative. And that's just something that I found to be helpful for me. Now, I know a lot of other people jump into a completely different creative outlet. So one of my friends, she does crochet for a living. Like, that is her thing. She loves it. But her break time is nothing to do with crochet and something completely different, just a totally different outlet that she can enjoy on her own time. And that's being outside with her horses. She has her own little farm, and that's what makes her happy. And so there's clear breaks between, those outlets that we have. And so if it's outside time, I encourage it, because the fresh air can do wonders. It can do wonders. But it's kind of finding things that aren't part of that creative circle to give your brain that break it needs. Because I think it's super easy to just like hop from everything to everything. And I'm guilty. I sit on TikTok for like hours, and I lie to myself and I say, oh, it's market research. Which like partly is true, but then other times I'm just like, why am I so tired? I can't come up with a creative idea for, this campaign. Like, what is going on? This isn't like me. And then I'm thinking, oh, I'm digesting all this creative material, not even from myself, that might be draining me in an odd way, because I'm constantly on the creative clock. So taking away time from your creative outlet is extremely important. And whatever way you do that is fine. But that's, I think, the biggest advice. And then to kind of talk a little bit to the last question about initiating new partnerships, I think engaging genuinely with the people around you in your industry is super important. So you're not reaching out to them in a way that feels like it's transactional. I think sometimes entrepreneurs get in the mindset that like they need to make money, and they get in this sales concept, which is true. We're trying to survive. But I think that can come off as very ingenuine. And so it doesn't really get you anywhere if you're engaging in a very transactional way, as opposed to, hey, I have this really cool A, B, and C thing that you might be interested in. Do we want to talk about it? Do we not? And just leave it there without that pressure, I think, is super important. So engaging genuinely with those people is super important.
Real quick, and we can continue on this topic, but another question was, what is the best way to reach out to everyone if we have further questions? So if you're willing to share, panelists, and it's complete, no pressure, but if you're willing to share a contact information, an email address, please pop that into the chat so folks can grab that. And oh goodness, we have somebody that's barking up your tree, Jeremiah. Although I think I know what Jeremiah's answer to the creative break. Jeremiah, am I right? Two things: food and games, and not video games necessarily. Well, some video games, right?
Basically, yes. I am both obsessed with food and obsessed with games of all types. I am a video gamer for sure. But yeah, I do a lot of traditional board games, which is having quite the renaissance of its own lately. But yeah, I agree with the breaks that don't involve the creative field. Like, it's really important. You burn out quick. You constantly question yourself if you're in the rut. Are you just repeating the same style over and over again, or the same look? For me, it's just like a color, or a style. Am I doing the same thing? And so I find a lot of inspiration from just life and television and film and reading and video games and board games and all those things. But I do think you get close to that burnout point, and those breaks are a huge thing. And I talked about it earlier in freelance. You had that gap, that scary gap between projects. Over time, I learned to appreciate it and like actually enjoy that gap, because that was when you come back on the other side, like you have such motivation, and like it's like you're approaching it again freshly. And and I'm working in a studio situation, you don't have that freedom between projects and stuff. You don't have that break, and so it starts to become this thing that an endurance race basically, as opposed to like I did a race a month ago and like, oh yeah, that sounds great, I should do it again, and you feel refreshed and you're ready to go. So I think there's a huge thing to be said about breaks for sure. But for me, it's like, yeah, surround yourself. I find with younger, passionate people in your field as well. As I get older, I look at that and I go, oh, I used to be like that, and I'm not like that anymore. Why is that? And those people inspire you as well to keep doing and to learn more and to pick up more. And it's all cyclical, for sure. And so I think surrounding yourself with that is a good thing and helps keep it fresh.
Well, and I've got a couple more questions, and I know we're at time. I've got one that really speaks to what you do, Jeremiah. So I may share that out with you, and then we can get that answered. And then maybe a real quick question. Do you keep a list of written goals each day that you want to accomplish, or are you list people, or are you just, I can't do it. But are you a list person, or and even long and short-term goals?
Yeah, I can answer that quickly. I have long-term goals, like one of my ones that I'll share aloud. I haven't shared with a lot of people, but by January 16th, 2025, I released my memoir. So I write and release my memoir. So I have these bigger goals. Being a recovering perfectionist, I have had a weird relationship with goals. Like if I said I don't want to set any goals, because what if I miss all the goals? And I'm like, you know what? A goal is a North Star for a direction you're going. Like, even if I don't hit that goal, because I set that goal, I started this 90-day memoir writing course. So like I'm already moving in that direction. So I would get clear with 3 to 5 to 10-year goals. And then every Monday, I sort of set my week up. Like one goal I have is every day I'm going to reach out to somebody new in a genuine way. So I have a list in an Excel sheet of people that I've reached out to and people that I want to reach out to. So day to day, it's more of like a to-do list, but I have these big goals that are guiding me. So I'm being guided in the direction I want to go, that I'm not accidentally fumbling into the direction. Yes, there's messiness in it, but I have my eyes set on that.
Perfect. Well, gosh, you know what? I'm going to have to share out with the group and get feedback from the folks who attended, but it's almost like I need part 2 to continue this conversation. So get ready. I may be hitting you guys up again.
I mean, fine by me. I feel like all the questions so far have been fantastic. Thank you for everybody who participated. But I feel like we have, between all of us, we have so much to just share, and perspectives that are just so unique to like our journeys. So it's great.
Well, I want to thank you all for participating, and I'm noticing Jeremiah's Emmy back there.
I know. I was about to ask, like, okay, that's nice.
Okay, Emmy.
Yeah, literally.
I don't know if I've seen it. No, I think I saw it once. Anyway, super cool. So that's one of the advantages of perhaps being with an organization. You might get an Emmy someday. So anyway, want to thank you all. And if you do want to share contact information, just shoot it to me as well, and I can send it out to the folks who participated today. And have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see if we see each other again in this context.
That would be awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you all. Sending you love.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.